This recording captures excerpts from Can We Call This Home by you, Bavyka, published in Liminal in 2022, recorded by you, Bavyka, on the 29th of August 2024 in Sydney on the lands on the Gadigal and Wangal people. 3. Glimpses. Since coming out as non-binary, I frequently travel back to my childhood and early teenage years to turn the compost of my memories and to make slight adjustments to the image in the mirrors. Sometimes this releases toxic gases and almost makes me real, but I find this process overall quite productive and transformative. I go there to support my young self and to recover some of their desires and fantasies. Initially, I'm looking for a place and time when I, or the real authentic queer me, was born. I'm tireless in my search for evidence. How can I imagine something that wasn't visible or there at all? Being born this way is a convenient explanation. I go through slides in my head. I see myself in my parents' home at the golden hour of 3 p.m. when no one is around. I would open my eyes and see a strange figure appearing, looking like so and so. And when I looked away, they would transform into something else, appearing at 3 p.m. and disappearing at 5 p.m. I use my older brother's clothes and sometimes a broom as a guitar. We have 3 music channels, MTV, Viva, and Musa Boss, that are the core of my life. Over the years, the repertoire grows and the stories become more complex. At first, the logic is simple. There is me, and then there is the rest of the world. But don't all desires have also a material basis? The wild roller coaster ride that was the dissolution of the Soviet Union brought liberties and challenges. While my country is transitioning from communism to capitalism, I am transitioning with it. Subtle, barely noticeable changes, still deeply closeted. We are all transitioning. My parents to landlords, through enforced privatization, and to unpaid workers of a dead system. The things and objects that infiltrate my newborn country help me. Second-hand clothes arrive in cardboard boxes from relatives who have already immigrated to Germany. The boxes have a particular smell, made of a mix of bubblegum and old clothes. At this time, everyone is dressed by the market, where in endless stalls, row after row, the same clothes are sold, brought from Turkey and later from China. Most of the women's clothes are extremely feminized. I'm furious. Just a few years after getting rid of school uniforms, everyone wants to look exactly the same. The question is more about who can afford it. I'm almost 15, a slow and painful time for me. My body is changing, but not quick enough. I think I'm stuck forever in this state of in-betweenness. My mother is busy making ends meet. She's inventing new recipes with half of the intended ingredients and sells the car parts that she is paid with as a bookkeeper. There's a new wave of vegetarian dishes that comes out of this era. I'm inventing my own clothes, starting with my first bra as a matter of necessity, and continuing with multiple other things like a beret and a vest, made out of a leather coat that I pull from one of the boxes. These are the first choices that I make out of choicelessness. I have no idea who I am, nor do I have any language for who I might become. But I sense the small window of opportunity. Glimpses of hybridity are everywhere. And for a moment, it isn't a bad thing. I'm undergoing messy and brave relationships with what is available. Practicing queer desires is some sort of collaboration, and knowledge of myself comes out of these alliances and relationships. It is not just me and the world, it is me in the world and the world in me, interconnected. Later, the sudden appearance of queer existences in post-Soviet 90s society would be explained as having been imported from the West. Simply because there were no queers in the Soviet Union, they must have come from somewhere else. The connection between homosexuality, the more used term, and the West is going to be cemented forever in people's minds. The sense of freedom will disappear soon again. 4. Fate. We didn't have a choice, my parents would repeat on several occasions, when thinking about their life during Soviet times. Most of the time, it seemed there was not much to choose from. At points, choices were difficult to make. More often, they were exposed to a situation where it was almost impossible to make a good choice. Like my father being offered a flat, but the offer meaning he would need to do back-breaking hard work for years. And so they said no, but would regret it afterwards. Like my mother being offered a wardrobe at her workplace that ended up with somebody else because she wasn't quick enough with her decision. In the 70s, to get anything, including food, furniture, and clothes, was like winning a lottery. Making choices always presented itself and was presented to us, children, as a painful experience. One of the most fascinating stories about choice that was retold every year in late March was about how the decision of my birth was made. My mother didn't want to have a second child and faced a difficult decision when she found out she was pregnant. Her good friend, later my godmother, trying to convince her to keep the baby, suggested she consider it in case it was a girl. Ultrasounds weren't a thing in 1981. My mother, generally as a bookkeeper, a master of logic and numbers, after giving it some thought, went to see an older woman at the end of the street to be told that I, just a weeks-old fetus, was going to be a girl. And so I was welcomed into this world. But how do I deal with the fact that while it represents a rare successful choice story in my family, my own choice to change and potentially keep on changing would not be perceived as such? Some of my family's choices are easier to retrace than others, as they haven't been overly discussed or reflected upon. By and large, my family's archive of choices includes those made out of need, for example, migration to avoid hunger, or out of the absence of choice altogether, forced displacement. I'm thinking about how the tradition of making choices or internalized amnesia about making choices is passed on from generation to generation. Do other families reflect on the choices they have made? Do they understand the history of choices in their families? In the end, the decision to emigrate was about my life choices, or more precisely, my parents' understanding of who I should not be. You will end up working at the market was a metaphor indicating the kind of dead end I would reach in my life if we stayed. This is how my parents justified our move. We packed our two suitcases in 1999 to first cross a border from Kazakhstan to Russia and then take a flight to Germany.